Hello! So, in my last two videos, I focused a bit more on Pennsylvania, but today we are back in New York City once again. And more specifically, we are in the neighborhood of Sunnyside Gardens in Queens. One of the reasons I love New York City is its diversity. Many neighborhoods do indeed have their own distinct vibes and character, and once you know a little bit of history behind these neighborhoods, you begin to understand why things are the way they are. In fact, recently I began to be very interested in urban planning, and this is one of my new ideas. In the coming months, I will begin work on proposing a new course in my department in which I will mix history along with the development of cities. And even though New York City will play a big role in the course, I also want to discuss the development of other cities around the world, such as Jerusalem or Johannesburg, Paris, and Shanghai, just to throw some of my ideas around. So, putting a new course together in college is certainly not easy. Well, at least not in my college, but I am really excited about this, and hopefully by the end of 2026, I can make this happen and offer something very unique and special to my students. So, now that you know a bit of what I'm planning, you will understand why this particular neighborhood is of interest to me. You see, Sunnyside Gardens was built in the 1920s, and the few streets which it encompasses was one of the first neighborhoods in the United States to be built inspired by Garden City movement. Now, there is few other examples like Forest Hills Gardens in Queens and some places in Boston or even Long Island, but this was certainly one of the first ones. The Garden City movement began in England in the late 1800s, and it was essentially a movement to design a community which was an alternative to the industrial cities, which were seen as dirty, overcrowded, and really lacking space for people to enjoy themselves and relax in. One of the biggest names behind this movement was Ebenezer Howard, who ultimately would argue that, cities do have their benefits, like entertainment and really the diversity, the mixing of different people. However, coming out of the age of Industrial Revolution, cities certainly also had their major problems, like unhealthy living conditions, not just the air pollution and things like that, but also how people lived. And there was a lack of open spaces where people could experience the form of freedom you would in a countryside. Therefore, he wanted to combine the advantages of a city with that of a countryside. Here is an example of his perfect community, which, as you see, consisted of 6,000 acres of land, most of which would be dedicated to agriculture and recreational purposes, like parks. At the center, there would be things like a museum, theater, library, city hall even, and then moving away from the center would be residential homes and stores. And industry like factories and trains would be on the outermost regions, further removed from the residential homes and gardens that surround them. In 1903, he established his first garden city, that of Letchworth, which is roughly like 35 miles away from London. This idea then spread further, with many communities around the world being influenced by such a design, including this here community, Sunnyside Gardens in Queens. As you see, the homes were designed to be 1, 2, or even 3 family private homes for the working class people. And large spaces were reserved for gardens and, open spaces for people to really have that balance of feeling that they are living in the city and everything rather nearby, but at the same time the freedom of the countryside and the green places to spend some time in and gardens to walk through. So generally there is a small place in front of the house as well as in the back reserved for a garden. Here, we are standing in the back of the community, and today there is a school here, this big building, and on the opposite side of the street there are some small businesses and shops, but a lot of this space was originally designed to be garages. And you have the train passing by, and behind the train today we have a shopping area, which also includes Home Depot, which I need to make a stop in after I finish recording this video. On the other side, there are tennis courts, a playground, and community gardens. Right next to these small homes, we also have the Phipps Garden Apartments, which were built just a few years later in the 1930s, but they too are inspired by the Garden City movement. So as we walk through it, you can see the green spaces and gardens which are integrated with the apartment buildings themselves. And so I just find it fascinating that once you have even a little bit of background information, you can really start dissecting a neighborhood. You begin to pay more attention to where things are located and what was the reasoning behind it all. Now, again, cities are a living, breathing creature. They constantly change and evolve with time. And so this neighborhood was designed about 100 years ago now. So in such a long time period, things change. But if you look closely, you will always find some sort of relics of the past. And at the same time, walking through the streets, you might sometimes wonder, well, why is this here? Or this doesn't make sense. And you know what? Sometimes maybe today it doesn't. But 100 years ago, it did. And so if you know the origins, it kind of gives you a little bit of a different perspective on everything. So thank you for going along with me on this short walk across this neighborhood, and I will see you all shortly. Have a great week. Bye.